Thank you so much, Chairman Himes, for this incredibly important hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today, sharing your expertise. You know, we hear almost every day here that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and thankfully there is broad bipartisan support for small businesses in the United States, but oftentimes we see that we don't treat all small businesses equally. Depending on who starts them or what kind of business you are, you don't often get access to, you don't get access to policies, you don't get access to capital, and sometimes you're just not even treated favorably, whether it's by your municipal government or your federal government. I want to dive into a little bit what kinds of small businesses often don't get as recognized or invested in, because there's a whole journey before you get to brick and mortar. And I represent an area, Jackson Heights, which is one of the most heavily immigrant areas in the world. Over 200 languages are spoken in a very small area. And it is a place where immigrants often start businesses on the street through street vendors. And we saw during the administration of the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, that there were some complications in the rollout and recognition of street vendors. Dr. Theodos, I want to start by setting the scene with you. Would street vendors count as a small business under the definition set by the SBA?
They have fewer than 500 employees, so that would be small, yes.
Thank you, yes. Advocates estimate that up to 20,000 New Yorkers alone, the vast majority of them immigrants, make their living selling food or merchandise on the city streets. And in the United States overall, we're talking about more than 56,000 street vendors working across the country. Not only that, but when you also pair the fact that, according to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, 1 in 4 small businesses in the United States are Latino-owned, and 75% of all new businesses in the United States are being started by Latinos. Latinas in particular are driving an enormous amount of this growth, with over 2 million Latina-owned businesses in the United States, a growth of more than 87% since 2007. And many of them are street vendors. Can you tell us a little bit, Dr. Theodos, about what kinds of policing and regulations that street vendors may be subject to, both in New York City or across the country?
Sure. Under the law, street vendors have to be licensed. That can be a long process. You often need a proof of residency, a photo ID, a sales tax ID number. You need to pay a few $100s to get a license fee, as well as in some environments in New York, you have to register if you're a food business with Department of Health, Mental Hygiene. So New York City in particular caps its street vendors at 2,900, now up to 4,000. And it's worth remembering this can be dangerous and very difficult work.
Thank you. You know, many folks think that street vendors are kind of this unofficial, informal business, but it's actually extraordinarily regulated and documented, particularly on the municipal level. And they pay taxes, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, so if street vendors are small businesses that pay taxes, and they have to follow an enormous amount of regulatory requirements on the municipal level, why is it that we're seeing and that we saw an enormous amount of them rejected for paycheck protection programs? Mr. Rogers, I want to turn to you. And thank you for being here, for representing the SBA Council on Underserved Communities. I want to delve into some of those reasons with you. My understanding is that the SBA requires business utility bills and leases, as well as a business bank account and payroll records for access to PPP funds. Street vendors often can't meet all of these requirements, especially those requiring business utility bills and leases, given the nature of their business. Does the SBA currently have any procedure for street vendors to ask for an exception to these requirements?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm here in my personal capacity, not as the chairman of the SBA's Council on Underserved Communities. but I do know that Administrator Guzman is really very committed to the types of businesses that you described and discussed this morning.
Am I right to understand that while neither the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL explicitly require a specific immigration status in their applications, immigration status does seem to impact whether an application gets approved or not?
I know that'll be one of the things that we will be studying as we have our meetings over the next 2 years. So we will have hearings and opportunities for different leadership groups to be able to come and talk with us about concerns and things that need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. Chairman Himes, I'd like to submit 2 documents to the record, one being an SBA application denial from a local immigrant small business owner, as well as a study on the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the informal economy.
Without objection, so ordered.